Sorry.
Okay, no problem. I'm just grabbing a drink. You can empty it. I'll come in. I'll do the Chris Collinsworth slide.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Weeb. Welcome to the post-game edition of the Kenny and Renny Show. There will be no great reveal. We have Andrew Hustler Patterson joining us. He's just going to step to the fridge to get himself ready. Thank you for joining us here on this Saturday night. The Jets have just fallen 2-1 in overtime to the San Jose Sharks. We know the big story today was COVID-related, as 7 Sharks players ended up on the COVID list, and then they also missed Logan Couture, one of their best players. Obviously, he was under the weather, not COVID-related, but under the weather nonetheless. So there's Andrew Hustler Patterson from Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thank you for joining us. What's going on tonight, my man? What's going on? We have
I dialed back the usual Saturday shenanigans so I could spend the evening with you talking about the game, and unfortunately the game did not well, we're going to be talking about it. Not a Picasso by any stretch of the
no doubt. Here's the
mic,
here's the warm welcome from Rob Mahoney, who is a frequent visitor on your show as well, Huss. We appreciate that they're paying attention. Oh, Scott Billick comes with it as well. And here's another. The combo platter is here. We got to mute your mic and a wake up right out of the gate. So we appreciate that from Rob. Rob is bringing it on a Saturday night here, Huss. And folks, I mean, we're not going to enjoy the news, or we're not going to, avoid the news of the week. But we've talked about it a lot on many platforms. So we're going to spend the majority of the time on the game itself. But we'll circle back to Kevin Cheveldayoff in a bit. Huss, what maybe stood out first and foremost about this 2-1 overtime victory loss for the Winnipeg Jets that left them with a 2-0-1 record on this 3-game California road swing?
Well, from a positive, battled back, put a lot of pressure on in the third period to get it to overtime. And I think more often, especially when you look at the rosters, I think, going to the extra frame at 3-on-3, you had to think the Jets had a pretty good chance of coming away with 2. An unfortunate play with Ehlers taking the penalty, and then, a power play goal ended up being 1. But they probably didn't deserve 2 points. I mean, I just didn't think they were very good tonight, Ken. And really, when you look at this road trip overall, and we'll focus in on this game, but I mean, the Anaheim game, it wasn't a full 60 minutes by any stretch. The Kings game, they had to pull it out of the fire in the third period, and Eric Comrie was big. And tonight, for a Sharks team that was missing so many players, it was frankly kind of surprising to see the way that there were chances on both sides and how good Connor Hellebuyck had to be to keep the Winnipeg Jets in this hockey game. They did create, some of their own, especially in that third period. But overall, I think a missed opportunity against a depleted team to get 2 points. I mean, you look at this road trip, and 5 of 6, we just heard Paul Maurice say, I'm kind of happy with that. But I think when you dig into the games themselves, you realize that the Winnipeg Jets have much more to give, and certainly more complete efforts for 60 minutes that we're not seeing right now. And I'll be honest, they were fortunate to get a point tonight, and I think somewhat fortunate to be 5 of 6. All that being said, better to be fortunate than to be lamenting missed opportunities and not getting any points in the standings.
Yeah, Huss, I'm going to say I liked what I heard from Neil Pionk and Adam Lowry. Lowry calling it unacceptable to start, and Pionk saying, sure, resilience, you love to have it as a player, but man, oh man, he also said you can't rely on it in 82 games. I mean, the Jets played from behind on all 3 games of this California swing. Hey, when we get it, I mean, early in the season, those teams that are, kind of on the rebound or in rebuilding mode can be dangerous, sure. But, at the end of the day, if you want to be an elite team, you have to take care of business, and the Jets were unable to do that for a good chunk of this hockey game. Sure, James Reimer was good in the first period, but the Jets generated so very little in the second period.
Nothing.
Offensively. It was very bizarre. And, they could have used a wake up. And I would say that they did have a much better third period. And, they did turn it on and found a way to get a point. I mean, that's 6 games in a row with a point after the 0-2 start. So, we're not here to rain on the parade. But I would say that it was a bit of a missed opportunity this evening, obviously, given the rosters. And sure, we get it.
We're not having a parade for getting 1 point against a half San Jose, half Barracuda squad tonight. No parades.
No, you're exactly right on that, Huss. We will break this down, and maybe let's go a little bit bigger. Let's stay in the game for a little while. Obviously, Kyle Connor was a little bit late on the back check. We totally understand that. I mean, it wasn't his fault that the turnover happened, and Nate Schmidt had his man, and he had Timo Meier in front, and Connor got beat to the back post by Tomas Hertl. But hey, what does Kyle Connor do? Ties the hockey game. You know what? I mean, I understand people on the old social media Twitterverse were quick to be all over Kyle. Oh, poor back check. Hey, mistakes still happen to even the best players in the National Hockey League. He knew that he probably should have taken that extra stride, and guess what? He went out and did something about it. So much like Pierre-Luc Dubois after the 2 turnovers in Anaheim, came back with a very strong game against the LA Kings, Kyle Connor still finds a way to make an impact by delivering the game-tying goal. First and foremost, maybe Huss, we've talked about this a little bit even on the program, I think on Thursday when I was with you. What did you think about Ehlers going up with Dubois and Connor on that line, especially starting in the second period and then finishing the hockey game that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, they really stood out in the third period. And God knows we've spent a lot of air talking about the combination of Dubois and Kyle Connor so far, and wondering, who is that? Is that a pair that they're going to put a complementary player like a Svechnikov or a Wheeler back there? Or do they go and put Nikolai Ehlers there? And I think this was obvious. I mean, what was what was Maurice's quote? It's not like I was robbing Peter to play Paul because Peter didn't show up.
Right.
He didn't have a lot from the other lines. And as far as, really generating high quality scoring chances. So down a goal, you put the guys that have been getting the job done together and you see what happens. I'm intrigued for it. I mean, with the pending return of Mark Scheifele, and maybe this is something we can get into as well, I was personally sort of hoping that we would see the Dubois-Connor pair stay together and see Ehlers and Mark Scheifele and work the other players around there, whether it's Andrew Kopp on one of the wings, whether it's Blake Wheeler, whether it's Svechnikov on one of those spots, kind of see where that goes. But with the fact that, Ehlers was there, I mean, that's a real high-octane line. And I'll tell you what, the way those guys are playing right now, if you do have Connor, Dubois, and Ehlers playing, I think it certainly takes some of the pressure off of Mark Scheifele when he does return to the lineup. But this is going to be a work in progress. I think much like the hockey club overall, there's a lot of things that they need to improve and get better at. And I think over the course of this next homestand, I think we'll see a number of different looks with the return of Mark Scheifele and hopefully get to a situation where you've got 2 high-end lines in your top 6 that, Paul Maurice can deploy as he needs and make the most out of those matchups with the last change.
For sure, Hassan, and I'm with you. At one point I looked up and I said, what is Paul Stastny doing with Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers? Then I remembered that Dubois was still serving the extra 2 minutes, right? I'm totally with you. I'm like, Paul, what are you doing? Why are you taking Dubois and Connor? Why are you splitting them up after a couple of bad periods? But then the old light bulb Huss went off and I'm like, right, double minor for Dubois. Even though the power play had expired, but he still had to serve the rest of the penalty there. So I noticed that the Twitter revolt was not on in full force. But I'm with you. I want to see those guys stay together, and I think there will be a little bit of some revolving activity. And whether it's Blake Wheeler on that line or whether it's Ehlers there, I'm with you. I'd like to see. I think that we're going to see Kopp and Scheifele as a pair to some degree, Huss, I think, for a little while here. And I support that grouping. And I also think that it's worth trying Nikolai Ehlers in there. We know that Blake Wheeler's had some success with Pierre-Luc Dubois in the past. Again, another really smart straight line player who has that dishing ability. And we know that Wheeler and Connor have some, chemistry that's, baked in as well. So
let me ask you this. Let's say that, because I think I'm with you. I mean, Andrew Kopp, with the way he's playing, is certainly in that top 6. I think he fits very well with Mark Scheifele. So let's say we've got Dubois and Connor as a pair, and we've got Kopp and Scheifele as a pair, and Blake Wheeler and Nikolai Ehlers will be the right wingers. Who makes most sense to play with who and who? And if it is Ehlers, the line is Ehlers along with Dubois and Connor, like we saw at the end of this game. Who's the number 1 line? Who's getting thrown out over the boards first? I mean, that's always been Mark Scheifele's spot. But I think you could make a pretty compelling argument that if it's Nikolai Ehlers, Dubois, and Connor, the way they're playing right now, that probably is the most deadly line that the Winnipeg Jets can throw at any given time.
Yeah, for sure, Hassan. And you and I have been talking about this for several weeks now about the importance of having Dubois and Scheifele get into more of a 1A and 1B situation rather than the definitive Scheifele number 1, Dubois number 2. It's 22 minutes versus 17 or 18. I think if you can minimize or shrink that gap a little bit, and then you have a little bit of an internal competition, I think Paul Maurice can ride the line that's hot. I mean, the one thing we've talked about a great deal over these last 2 years, Jets haven't had enough games, Huss, where the first and second lines were going at the very same time. And that's been problematic when it comes to, sustaining some consistency and rattling off some long winning streaks. So for me, the biggest development, you talked about it with Kelly Moore on the pregame show. The biggest development is Pierre-Luc Dubois, not only his strong play, but his emergence as a force, not just a guy who's a complementary piece. He's quickly become a driver, and the driver that they expected when he came to Winnipeg in that trade. So for me, I think it's a little bit too early to tell. I mean, we understand that Mark Scheifele was asymptomatic, but by the time he plays, it's also going to be now 13, 14 days between games. So now you're putting Mark Scheifele in kind of the similar shoes to what Pierre-Luc Dubois kind of dealt with last year coming out of his quarantine. Now, yes, Mark has been on the ice the last, this will be the third day. But still, I mean, you're an elite level athlete, a high level athlete, but now you've been taken out of your rhythm and routine. I mean, it's going to take some time to not ease him into the game, but I don't know that you want to be throwing a 23-minute affair for him on Tuesday night against the Dallas Stars. So, but you don't have to because you have Dubois playing as well as it is. So for me, I'm very curious. Obviously, Blake Wheeler was playing with Paul Stastny. I mean, you and I have discussed this as well. I think that is a pair that you could run at certain times, but I liked where Blake Wheeler started in this hockey game. And the one thing we've also discussed quite thoroughly, the third line doesn't really have an identity right now. And I think if you played Wheeler and Lowry together for a stretch of time, I think you can find an identity for that line. But I also don't have a problem with Evgeny Svechnikov being on that line. I think having a trigger man who's still a big body and gets around okay, he's not a burner, but having a sniper like that to the right of Adam Lowry, I could see some potential there. Vesalainen, I think, looked more comfortable on his natural side, but I also liked the jump that Jansen Harkins showed in the third period where he got bumped into that rotation onto the third line, and Vesalainen only had a couple of shifts. Huss, let's dive into 11 and 7. I understand what Paul...
Just before we move
on.
Sure,
yeah.
The one thing I'll just say is that, and we've spent a lot of time about how much, especially last season after the trade, how much Maurice was relying on Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor. They played a ton. The minutes were massive. But a big part of that was the struggles to get things going on that second line when Pierre-Luc Dubois was struggling. He's a totally different player this year. And in the absence of both those players, he and Kyle Connor have really clicked. So, I mean, we know what we're going to get from Mark Scheifele. I mean, Scheifele is still going to be the same guy, and it might take a few days to come back and be in that spot. But once you have that, I think for the first time since that trade, Ken, there is the potential of sort of spreading the wealth on those top two lines and having a real legitimate 1A, 1B situation, which was the concept of what they were trying to accomplish when they traded Laine and Roslovic for Dubois in the first place. I think it's been worth the wait right now, and we still really haven't seen, a lineup with Mark Scheifele and Pierre while playing the VR outside of those first two relatively underwhelming games. So it'll be very intriguing as to how things work and what they can get out of both of those lines once healthy on this homestand beginning on Tuesday against Dallas.
Yeah, right on, Huss. Quick one here. Ty, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Flat starts have been an issue at times, but if we're questioning the leadership, are we also praising the leadership for the ability to rally in the third period? I don't think it's a leadership issue. Every player needs to get himself ready to play. The Jets were flat coming out of the gate. No one is excusing that or saying that it's okay, but I don't see it as a leadership issue that the Jets have had some tough first periods. Tonight was a tough first period. It was a tough second period. Let's not kid ourselves. The Jets I actually didn't mind the first 5 minutes or so for the Jets, but after that, man, the shots just started piling up, and Hellebuck was under siege. That game could have been out of control. You know this already. Hellebuck loves that barn. That's the barn where he put up the 51 stops. He looked tonight. Yeah, exactly. He looked tonight out of the gate, was like, "You're not stopping. You're not going to get one past me. No chance, right?" I mean, and again, it took a rebound for him to get beaten on the backside there by Tomas Hertl as well. And I mean, just purely bad luck. I mean, the one-timer in overtime goes off of Logan Stanley up in the air and over the shoulder. I mean, there's really nothing that Connor Hellebuyck can do in that game. And as you mentioned right out of the gate, I mean, tough break for Ehlers. I think he was making the right play to try to get it back to Hellebuyck, but he just didn't get enough on it. I mean, that led to the penalty. And
the Jets were sort of careless with the puck tonight in a number of situations. I mean, the first goal, Josh Morrissey just mishandled the puck, and that started the play. By the way, that number 4 Barabana, 94 Barabana,
oh man,
San Jose. Dude, I cannot stop thinking former Moose Alex Koroluk every time I see him. Remember that?
He's even got a little bit of the long hair going there a little bit, Huss, doesn't he?
A little blast from the past for all you Moose OGs. But I have to tell you, I mean, Nikolai Ehlers was the same thing. I mean, even Andrew Kopp a couple times in their own end had the puck and lost it. So puck management was not what it needed to be for the Winnipeg Jets. And you can look at small, simple mistakes at one point in the game that really can be the difference between winning and losing a tight game like the Winnipeg Jets were in last night. But it wouldn't have been tight, back to your original point, if Connor Hellebuyck wasn't Connor Hellebuyck tonight. He was brilliant, and that's the reason why the Jets had the opportunity for Kyle Connor to tie the game in the third period.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't mind these lines that are mentioned by TS, but let's dig into that topic that isn't been discussed very much. I mean, I understand Paul Maurice has said he's liked some things about 11 and 7. I personally, I don't see the same things that he's seeing right now. I understand. I know that the way the games were spaced out in these first 8 of the year, that you can survive without really rolling much or putting much emphasis or stock into that fourth line. But, I mean, today's development to me, Huss, only reinforces why I have been driving the Gus bus from the very beginning. Riley Nash has obviously played his way into the doghouse. He was no longer in the penalty kill rotation for the last 3 or 4 games. Today he's a healthy scratch. We understand that, cap concerns and everything else, but, I mean, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but if you're not going to play Nash, and the reason why you brought him in was to be a penalty killer, man, we know David Gustafson's had a really great start with the Manitoba Moose. I'd like to see them give Gustafson a chance on the penalty kill and be able to run on that fourth line. And maybe you have a fourth line of Gustafson, Harkins, and Vesalainen, and all of a sudden now maybe you're not. To me, it reminds me of the time when it was Kopp, Roslovic, and Brendan Lemieux, right? You're not using them in a defensive role. You're kind of using them in a 6 to 8 minutes where you're trying to get offensive zone time. And very similar fashion to how Kopp was that defensive specialist, Gustafson could kind of play that role as a young player, but he also makes players around him better and has some offensive tools that he could really use. So, and again, that's not a knock on Dominic Toninato. I think he's a very good depth player. I think he's a perfect 13th forward. You can plug and play him when you need a guy, but I really think that in the weeks to come, like I said, I don't necessarily think it will be for the start of this homestand, but man, unless Riley Nash is going to be used on the penalty kill, I don't think it's going to work for the Jets to roll with 11 and 7. That's not to discount the job that Nathan Beaulieu has done on the penalty kill at times, but the limited usage and maybe the odd shift that he takes it forward, I really think the Jets have an opportunity to implement some more skill into the lineup when using Gustafson. And we talked about pairs. Vesalainen and Gustafson was a very effective pairing in the American Hockey League, Huss, and I would like to see them used together, and I'm guessing you feel the same way.
Yeah, listen, I'm in with Gustafson. We've spent quite a bit of time in the last 10 days or so talking about him and what he could do for the Winnipeg Jets, and I realize it's a very strange situation with the guys being on the COVID list. I don't think they had the ability to do that, and that has really been the impetus for going 7-11. 7-11 is not a way to run the bench long term. I don't think. And I will say this. In the last couple games, it has given Maurice the opportunity to get a couple extra shifts for both Ehlers and Kyle Connor, who have been flying the way they are. But as I said, that's a nice little wrinkle. But I don't think that's the way they really want to run long term. I think they want to load up, get 2 solid top lines, have a great third line and a fourth line that contribute and hold their own, and get 3 pairs running relative. I mean, it must be difficult for the defenseman, to be honest, playing a
Right.
regular shift, and then all of a sudden Bo's going to go in. I mean, I think things will be much more settled when they end up at 12-6. And I'm sort of with you. I'm not sure whether Riley Nash is part of that anymore. Although for all the people freaking out in the chat about signing him, guys, it's a league minimum extra deal. I mean, that you had to fill out the roster with a few players, and those guys are fine to be in the press box or not around. But I think the potential of what Gustafsson can do could really make a difference right now. And I'll be honest, as we sit here right now with the team coming back, I would be surprised if we don't see Gustafsson at some point during this homestand. What is it, 7 games over the next couple of weeks?
7-game homestand, yeah.
He gets the opportunity. And like you, I wouldn't be surprised if when he gets that walk down the hall, it's a one-way ticket. I think he'll be able to, I think show that he belongs now. He certainly has done everything he could at the American Hockey League level, just waiting for that chance that, frankly, I didn't think he got a very great chance through training camp. And I was a little surprised through the preseason that we didn't see more of him in those situations.
Yeah, and for TS, I mean, eventually Gustafsson, yes, he is going to be better than being on the fourth line, but right now he's not better than any of Adam Lowry, Pierre-Luc Dubois, or Mark Scheifele, or probably even Paul Stastny. So his entryway and his passageway to the National Hockey League is currently as a fourth line centerman, unless you're going to potentially try him on the wing, which in my discussion with him in the during the pro camp, he was open to moving to the wall if that helped his cause, but I do see him as a fourth line center coming out of the gate. And when some people say, is it worth it? Corey mentioned, is it worth it? Well, his minutes will be elevated because of the penalty killing element, although I think Paul Stastny has done a nice job in that role, and you can use him there when you need him. I would prefer to have Gustafsson in that role, get his feet wet early in this first quarter of the year so that by the third quarter and when the stretch drive arrives, he's fully and firmly established himself as an NHL level penalty killer, and then you can play him more. And you always have Stastny available if you need him. But
hey, get in the lineup first and prove
exactly,
that,
exactly.
You're staying there and earn more minutes. I mean, I know we all want everyone to come up and, a first-round pick. Let's put him in the top 6. This guy's done great with the Moose. Well, put him on the top line. Put him on the power play. It takes a little while to earn that. And I think he's done everything to earn the opportunity. And I'm pretty optimistic that once he gets in the lineup, he'll show the coaching staff that he belongs in the National Hockey League first, earns that trust of the coach at the NHL level, and then we'll see. But this is a very young man just starting his career. You don't need it all to happen right away, but he needs the opportunity to show that he can, and I'm hoping he gets that soon.
Yeah, right on. And here's a good question, Huss. Yeah, Rob, we understand it has only been a 3-game trip, but the Jets have gone West Coast style twice in a 3-week period. So this is interesting. They were
Time zone alert.
Yeah, there you go. We got a PT alert. How many times will it be mentioned in the next press conference? Over-under starts at 3.5, Huss. What does the Cool Bet site say about that?
I hope it's under, but I think you might be right. Listen, the schedule is the schedule. You can't spend all the time talking about, we were in this time zone, whatever. Prepare, get ready to play. You know when the game is. Do what you got to do to be ready. And listen, I don't know what we'll see on Tuesday. I mean, this is not a Jets thing. I still don't know why it is that teams often lag in their first game home from a homestand, but that's the fact. But I think considering how disappointing this game was and the way the Winnipeg Jets played, I assume they'll have a day off tomorrow. Monday will be back at on practice, and I think we'll see a pretty focused and hungry team back on home ice in front of the home fans with a big divisional game against the Dallas Stars on Tuesday. And I hope we won't be talking, but yes, exactly, Jeff, he is. That's why I mentioned that.
There's a couple guys here. Eric, thanks for joining us as usual. Let's dive into Blake Wheeler. Paul Maurice thought he would slowly ease him in, but he was over 18 minutes. Got the bump to the top 6, I think, at parts of the second period, and then full time in the third. What did you see from the Jets captain tonight?
Listen, it wasn't vintage Blake Wheeler, but for all the people in the chat, and I've seen both here in the program before, that are sort of hanging this loss on Blake Wheeler, give your head a shake, folks.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people want to, for whatever reason, take shots. He's a bit of a lightning rod right now. Blake Wheeler makes the Winnipeg Jets better. And is he at 100% right now? Is he ready to go for as many minutes? Maybe not. But, I think when he was on, especially in that third period, moving up into that top 6 role, they had some pretty good opportunities. They didn't go in. It ended up being the Connor Dubois Ehlers line that made the difference and got it in. But I'm not too worried about Blake Wheeler. Now, if all of a sudden he's on that top line, he's eating up all the minutes that are being taken care of, taken by players that are really producing right now, well, that's another conversation entirely. But for game one back, considering what he's been through, I thought it was fine. But I think there's a lot more to get from Blake Wheeler, and I expect to see that come in the homestand, regardless of where he's playing.
Yeah, right on, Huss. I couldn't agree more. I thought, again, I mean, also, people, what if you expect him to be great after having COVID and being off the ice for 10 full days before he had 2.5, 3 practices? I mean, that is a wake-up moment. So I understand folks want to blame Blake for everything. Some folks, I'm not going to say all, of course, we know that. But I mean, again, let's see how things roll. I mean, like you said, there has been a long time since the Jets have had their full forward lineup in play. They will have that, presumably on Tuesday, provided Mark Scheifele is back on the lineup, or back in the lineup as we expect him to be. On Tuesday against the Dallas Stars. How about on the back end? I think obviously we've talked a lot about Josh Morrissey and Nate Schmidt. They've had a lot of good outings. Tonight probably wasn't, I don't think it was a vintage or a very strong night for the duo. Overall, I think they've been pretty good. And hey, tough nights are going to happen to everybody, but what are your thoughts on the pairing overall so far this year?
I think the emergence of Schmidt has helped Josh Morrissey in a number of ways. And I think Josh worked his ass off to improve in a few ways. Yeah. I think he came in with a much clearer mind, a real focus on what he needed to do to get back to the level that he played at in the past. And I've been quite pleased with what he's done so far. Listen, I tell you what, his one-timer, his shot is significantly better right now, and I think he's more dangerous. And a part of that is also playing with a guy that you have to respect like Nate Schmidt. There will be moments in their own end. I mean, including Schmidt. There's been a couple turnovers that have been a little iffy. But again, we're 8 games into a season of a brand new, a new teammate, a new guy playing online. I think like many things, it's a work in progress. I did love Neil Pionk tonight. I thought he was dangerous. I thought he was shooting the puck, and I thought he was making a lot of things happen last night. And, to me, Pionk is the guy that we've really been able to count on here in Winnipeg for the last few years. It's a guy, regardless of who he's playing for, to be dangerous offensively. And the compliment of Brendan Dillon playing with him, I think, is just a great partner. I love the dynamics between those two. But for Schmidt and Morrissey, there's been some really strong games. There's been some moments that have been a little bit iffy. Right. But so far, I'd say so good. But I do think there's more from both of those players as they continue to get more comfortable with each other.
For sure. You touched on the other pairing, Huss. I talked about it after the last game. I thought there have been some real strides taken by Neil Pionk and Brendan Dillon, and I love Brendan Dillon's comments about it yesterday as well, coming out of San Jose, about the amount of time they've been spending together and the communication element, and just the fact that, obviously, it's taking some time, and when you have, we've heard Nate Schmidt talk about this too, when you have guys that are aggressive by nature, well, guess what? The majority of the time that's going to work well, but when it doesn't work, it's been creating 2 opportunities, and sometimes those opportunities end up in the back of the net. If you want to play a safe game all the time, you can do that, but then you're also not going to get the same level of offensive play at the other end as well. Sometimes those pinches have not worked out for the Winnipeg Jets, but I agree with you completely. Like I said, I loved what I heard from Brendan Dillon. I think that pairing is getting better. I love the dynamic that Brendan Dillon has brought to this team. We know he's an upgrade from Derek Forbort. That's not a knock on Forbort. I just think that come playoff time, a guy like Brendan Dillon, who has had a series of defense partners from Dylan DeMello to Eric Carlson to Brent Burns to John Carlson, and now having Neil Pionk to his on the right of him, I really think that he's the kind of guy that will, when the temperature in the game heats up, he'll be getting better. I think Brendan Dillon is a guy that the Jets will love to have when it's the stretch drive and the playoff run, because he has that dynamic that they have been lacking these last 2 playoff runs.
We've seen it already in the first 8 games. His little "hey, how you doing" to Cousins in the Wild game after he was screwing around. I think, if we're just comparing him to Derek Forbort, and again, this isn't to crap on Forbort, because I think he played an incredible value for what he was making, what he brought to the team, especially in the first half of last season. But in almost every aspect of the game, Brendan Dillon is an upgrade from Derek Forbort, and you put him with Neil Pionk, and I think that is a pairing that is the equal of the top. I mean, who is the number one pairing right now? I guess it depends on, where we're at. But he's there. And we should mention Dylan DeMello. I mean, I'll say this. I do hope they get back to the 6-12 because I think that it has been difficult for that third pairing going in and out, popping in Nate Beaulieu. I mean, especially a young player like Logan Stanley that I actually thought was fine tonight. I mean, I didn't have any issues with him, but I think Dylan DeMello, has very quietly been very solid in that third pairing right now. And he's a guy that may need to move up depending on injury at some point. But I'll tell you what, the team's in pretty good shape with that third pairing as it is right now with a growing, not height-wise. I'm not sure if you can get any more Logan Stanley. Playing along with a pretty solid veteran like Dylan DeMello.
Right on. Some folks in the chat seem to suggest they're seeing a little bit of a drop in play from Stanley. I don't think there's a regression there, Huss, by any stretch, but I do think that he has been the player most impacted by the Beaulieu plug and play on the back end because of the 11-7 format. Yeah. Yes, there have been the odd shift where they have been out together, and yes, I understand the other night on the Stanley pinch it led directly to a goal, but I think I don't see a sophomore slump here. I just see a guy who's trying to get his footing in on a new season, and I, like I just said, I mean, I think it has more to do with the fact that he hasn't been able to get into the same kind of rhythm. What I have seen, he's been on the penalty kill. Yeah, I mean, hey, there have been 2 unfortunate plays in overtime, but I think if people are blaming Logan Stanley because the puck went in today or because he didn't score in overtime against the Minnesota Wild and he shouldn't have been going up the ice and trying to end the game, come on now. You try to win the game in that situation every single time. I mean, Cam Talbot made a great save.
Criticism, Ken. Agenda-driven criticism.
No, I understand. And, it's been a long week here, so
you don't say.
The level of the compassion level is kind of tapped out to a certain degree, I guess, on a lot of fronts. But anyways, I think it's it's just a matter of time for Stanley. I mean, can he play better? Yeah, of course. He played very well down the stretch last year, and let's not forget it's early in the year. He's trying to get his footing going. Yeah, I mean that's just I don't have any concerns about Logan Stanley, and I think the folks that have concerns, I would just say let's let it breathe a little bit longer. If I had told you, Huss, that the Jets would be 4-2-2 after they started the year 0-2-1, I would say, sorry, let's just start there. What would you say to that?
I would say sign me up for that. And you know what? I think it speaks to the talent on this club and certainly the brilliance of Connor Hellebuck. And I got to give Eric Comrie credit for coming in. And a lot of people weren't expecting a performance the way he had in LA because this team still hasn't played anywhere close to their best for a full 60 minutes. And they've been doing it without Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, 2 of their most important players. So all things considered, coming back home to start this homestand at 4-2-2. I remember what it was like going to the home opener, still waiting for that first win with 1 point over the course of the first 3 games. So you know what? They've done what the bottom line is. You need to stack up these points right now. They've been getting it done. There's a long way for this team to go. And we'll see what they look like against the Dallas Stars when they start that homestand on Tuesday and presumably get 55 back in the middle for a big addition to the lineup.
Yeah, let's go there for a little bit here, Huss. I mean, obviously we know that the Jets were playing a lot of Pacific Division opponents, not named Las Vegas and Edmonton out of the gate, so they needed to try and stack a lot of points. Going 4-2-2, would they prefer to be 6-2? Of course they would, but I think points in 6 of 8 games, when you look at how that year started, I think that's showing some growth. I am with you totally. I think the starts need to get cleaned up. I think the Jets did not play their best, and they had to kind of rally from behind in all 3 of these California games. In the first game against Anaheim, they were a lot more defensively sound when they only gave up the 22 shots, and I think only 12 or 13 at even strength. The one thing, yes, it was a power play goal in overtime, but that goes off a player. I mean, for the most part, the penalty kill is stabilized to a degree. The Jets did not have a power play tonight. I mean, I know a lot of folks fired up about the officiating.
They should have.
There was an obvious one missed on the Ehlers partial breakaway there. I mean, I understand that the official to the left of the play there, down the left wing side, may not have seen the poke to the back of the leg, but where's the back referee? I mean, that's got to be called by the back referee, right? That is your job, to follow up the play. And let's not kid ourselves. Nikolai Ehlers is one of the top 5 fastest skaters in the NHL. If he suddenly is unable to get a shot off, it's probably not because the puck just rolled off of his stick, right, Huss, in that situation?
I was stunned that wasn't a penalty. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and rag on the referees for everything else in the game, but that particular instance, I think there's an argument that was a penalty shot.
Yeah, I thought so too in real time. Yeah, I thought so in real time too.
Should have gone up, and it was interesting. But I think it speaks to just how poor the Jets were. I mean, they didn't really do enough to create penalties, and you would have thought that with an undermanned Sharks team, with all these American leaguers playing in the lineup tonight, that would have been something that the Jets played to their level that they're capable of. They might have, generated a few more power play opportunities. That should have been one. But overall, sometimes you earn those power play chances. And I think overall, the Winnipeg Jets didn't do enough to end up on a 5-on-4.
Right on, Huss. And Rick, the bad bounce I'm referring to is the one that went off the leg of Logan Stanley and over and into Connor Hellebuck's net. I'm not saying it was a bad bounce for the Jets, that they played poorly. In terms of the penalty, Nikolai Ehlers was clearly frustrated, but I mean, if Nikolai Ehlers doesn't take Brent Burns down, it's a breakaway probably for Brent Burns. So, I mean, that's a natural reaction when you're falling, that you're probably going to haul the guy down. I mean, I wouldn't call it a bad penalty. I mean, it's an unfortunate penalty for Ehlers, but I think it's a natural reaction play. And as we mentioned, yes, without Hellebuck in the first period, as I've said, maybe before Rick arrived, the Jets would have been in big time trouble. He played great. But yeah, I mean, let's dig in a little bit on the Central Division. Playing so much against the Pacific, the style of play has clearly been different in the games early this season, Huss. We know the game against Minnesota, the temperature was very high, and the game against Nashville would have been higher than normal, but maybe not as high as Minnesota. What are you expecting in the game against the Dallas Stars? Because, There have been some. This is one of the games where the Jets haven't had Patrick Laine in the lineup, and he's been a guy who has lit up the Dallas Stars, and that I think continued when he went to Columbus. So, what are we expecting from the Dallas Stars on Tuesday night?
Yeah, not just Laine. Remember the number that Joel Armia used to do with the Stars every time they played? I think he had like 50% of his goals as a Jet against Dallas. I haven't seen them play yet so far this year. I've obviously seen some highlights. I know they lost a tough one to Vegas earlier this week when Laurent Brossoit really starred in the third period, and then they lost at home to Ottawa today. So I am interested to see what Dallas looks like, but I do think, Ken, your point of the atmosphere, the intensity, I think is going to be ratcheted up for the team to come back, do it in front of their home fans, but especially another one of these Central Division matchups. And listen, you get 5 out of 6 points and don't play very well over the course of this road trip. I think you can consider yourselves fortunate that you've got the goaltending that you've been given and you were able to stack 5 or 6 points, but it's time to play better and rise to the occasion for some very important games in the division. You got Dallas, you got the Chicago Blackhawks, who are struggling mightily right now. And then on Saturday, it will be a really interesting test, the New York Islanders squad that's been up and down. And here's an interesting one for you, Ken. I know this isn't central, but I'll just mention this because of the game coming up on Saturday. So much talk about the Jets working through this new defensive system and still giving up a ton of shots and having Connor Hellebuck very, very busy. The Islanders right now in the top 3 in the National Hockey League in shots allowed, and that is not a stat that we're used to seeing associated with a Barry Trotz club. So that'll be a very interesting game on the second end of back-to-backs. I guess the other thing about this game, Connor Hellebuck's wife is due I believe tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, to welcome in a future Vezina winner into the world. So what that means for his availability at some point. But, considering the way the Jets, I think, stepped up at times for Eric Comrie, but they certainly gave him the opportunity to show that he was up to the challenge. It does give a lot of intrigue going into these next 2 divisional games to begin this 7-game homestand.
Yeah, and the other thing about the Islanders, Sorokin has been just absolutely fantastic between the pipes for the Islanders. One of the reasons why, although the shot totals against have been much higher than we're used to seeing, he's been so good between the pipes that he's kind of kept some stability going there. There was a question about Dylan Sandberg. I don't think Dylan's timeline has changed at all. I think it was Robert. It was always going to be probably an 8-week span, and once Dylan Sandberg is healthy, he will be assigned to the Manitoba Moose and be trying to kind of make up for lost time after going down with that high ankle sprain in the sort of the tumble he had with Johnny Kovacevic at the end of a practice on the first day of training camp. So he will not be on the Jets' radar for quite some time. At least that's my expectation. He's going to need some time to play catch up at the American Hockey League, which is where he was expected to be anyway this year, Huss. But the Jets will look forward to having him back, at least playing at the pro level. We know Ville Heinola missed today's Moose game. He was out of action. I think he's day-to-day with a lower body issue. So both of those top prospects are kind of on the mend right now. And just a quick one here, Kenny's water bottle. I mean, in a normal race, Ehlers could catch him, but Ehlers was on the ice on his behind, so I don't see in a scenario where he could have popped up and caught him. So
he went full Karate Kid, the sweep the leg.
He did go for the sweep there. I think there should have been a penalty. There should have been a penalty awarded to the Cobra Kai on that situation there, Ross. There's no doubt about that.
And the one thing is, it might have been an unnecessary penalty because of where Burns was. I mean, I think Neil Pionk was in a position where he could have cut him off, and he was on the off wing because of the handedness of Burns. But you know what? It's a split second. You're in overtime. The last thing you want to do is let a guy like Burns go in all alone. And you know what? And the thing is, that was just 30 seconds into OT. If you're able to kill that penalty and get back to 3-on-3, you've got an opportunity. If you look at the Jets' 2 losses in overtime this year, they're both on the power play. I mean, that's, unfortunate, but, it happens sometimes with the nature of 3-on-3. So they'll need to, but staying out of the box at 5-on-5 and at 3-on-3 will be something the Jets will be looking to do. But it just came from a couple mistakes. The goal off Josh Morrissey, and then the second goal off a mistake by Nikolai Ehlers that ended up turning into wax on, wax off.
Classic.
Turning into the winner.
And folks in the chat, I understand that everyone thought that Pionk might have been able to catch him, but Nikolai Ehlers can't see Neil Pionk in the side, okay? So
not a lot of time to evaluate the
we can see him. We can see him in the corner of the screen, but as you're going for the leg sweep, it just was impossible for him to know that. So this is again one of the great examples of the game is a lot easier in slow motion from the coach as it is at ice level when you're making these split second decisions. Again, love the passion, love the intensity, but let's cut Ehlers a little bit of slack on this one. I think he's done enough in the last week in terms of the igniting of the rallies to earn a bit of a breather here on what happened on the overtime winner.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think Ehlers. If we're talking about the list of issues of the Winnipeg Jets, let's put Nikolai Ehlers right down there with Connor Hellebuck at the bottom of the list. We'll be on Tuesday. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's not much. It hasn't been much time since the folks in the chat room were fired up about 14 allowed in 2 games. So, okay, we got the man who was quoted in the Athletic, and the Sean Fitzgerald article has shown up to the chat. Michael Remus.
Oh, Radio is Dead Remus?
Yeah. Radio is Dead Remus. But we appreciate the
people are fired up about the new graphics card. The marble races are going to be even smoother going forward after a new WST purchase. Apparently, that's happened.
How is I don't want to switch the gears too much here, but how's the merch moving, Huss? How's the merch been moving?
It's been amazing. I mean, the hats, everything's sold out at Royal. I think we've got a couple left through the store, and then the t-shirts, hoodies, all that stuff available at the store too. So it's been great. I mean, that's not going to be anything that if anything, it's just a great marketing vehicle for guys like us that have started something new. That every day it seems more people that we're fans of 1290 are discovering what we're doing on a daily basis, what you guys are doing, of course, the IC guys after the game. So yeah, it's great. I mean, all that stuff, if you're interested in checking it out, just head over to winnipegsportstalk.com and hit the store. And some great quality stuff. We ordered it all first to make sure that it was good. Really, really loved it. I've had great feedback on it. So yeah, if you want to pick it up and support the cause, hit the site.
Right on. And again, I'm not gonna hang on this for very much longer. But Joe, let's look at the timeline. I don't think Pionk was anticipating Ehlers to get on the ice before, and I don't think he had enough time before the wet leg sweep was delivered to yell and say he has burns. But again, these are split-second decisions. I mean, if Ehlers had the benefit of, knowing what happened, maybe he doesn't do it. But I think it's a natural reaction that something like that happens, that you don't want to allow a potential breakaway. So let's move on from that and go from there. Huss, I mean, anything else catch your attention from this one that you want to dig into?
I'm interested in your perspective on just how run and gun it was in the first couple of periods. I mean, you would think that with such so many guys out on San Jose, and maybe it was just the spunk of some young players getting their first opportunity. I guess we can all have our speculate on, maybe the Jets thought they had it won already, or this was going to be a fun game where everyone was going to score. But it really was crazy to see the chances at both ends through the first period of the game. And then the Jets sort of, lacking everything in the other end for a good period of time from the last 5 minutes or so of the first period through the second. And the Sharks still worked their ass off and, continued to create and put pressure on Connor Hellebuck, who really did have to keep the team in the game. I mean, that blueprint is fun for fans. And I mean, entertaining wise for a 1-1 game, my God, there was a ton of rubber going at the goaltenders. But Paul Maurice, and heck, we heard from him afterwards, Ken, not pleased with the overall performance of his club, especially in those first two periods in their own end with the chances that they were allowing on their Vezina Trophy winning netminder. Yeah,
for sure. Lackluster, right? I mean, no one's trying to hide this. Again, much like we said after the Anaheim game or the LA game, the Jets template was not on display on this road trip. No one's arguing that it is, and if anyone is arguing that, then it's time to reassess a little bit. But we knew this was going to take some time, and I understand folks think that when you implement some new systems, it should happen overnight. And I also get it that it's taken a few years to get to this point, and that with the personnel improvements, you should expect things to improve defensively. So I think those improvements will be coming. I do not think they have been at a rapid enough rate, or at the rate we probably expected them to happen. But I also don't think that it's a situation that will linger throughout the course of the year. And if it does, then either tweaks will need to be made, or pairings will need to be adjusted, and everything else. But let's go back to Ehlers for 1 second, and I don't want to talk about the play any longer. But Huss, overall, Dom is wondering what I think of Ehlers' play. I'll start, and then I'll turn it over to you. But Dom, I don't think Ehlers' play is off. I think in the first 4 games when he was unable to secure a point, he had 34 shot attempts and 17 shots on goal. So to me, Ehlers was not having issues generating offense in the first 4 games, and since that time, I think he scored 2 in 19 seconds and was heavily involved in the game winner again tonight. So to me, I don't think he's have we seen the best of Ehlers at all times? No, I don't think so. But even on the games where Ehlers has been a tad off, he still has been able to generate enough offense to create enough either for himself or for his line mates. So I don't see a lot of issues. Can he play a little bit better? Sure. Ehlers is always looking to play better, but I don't think that he has played poorly by any stretch. And I know, Dom, you're not saying he's playing poorly, but has he been off to a degree? I don't see him as being off. I see him as sort of trying to find his way. He's had a bunch of different line mates again in the early stages of the year, and I think he's going to settle in really nicely. What we had seen the last couple of games was Ehlers really taking ownership of the power play. The units changed a little bit without Wheeler and Scheifele, and being on that top unit, I think he really kind of found, you get more of those puck touches. So now that the Jets have Wheeler and Scheifele both coming back, on Tuesday, or that's our expectation, I'm curious if they can go back to the 1 minute apiece, or maybe the Ehlers unit starts a little bit more, because both Wheeler and Scheifele, yes, Wheeler was in the lineup, but there were no power plays tonight. So you're only going to have one practice before the game. So I'm curious if there'll be a temptation to maybe go to the Ehlers unit a little bit more out of the gate on Tuesday night. But again, we also know the Jets need to get Mark Scheifele going. I mean, for all the folks that have said, oh, hey, the Jets played great without Wheeler and Scheifele, that was important. But the Jets are not a better team without Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele. And getting a number one center back is going to help them immensely, and help, Blake Wheeler is going to help the Winnipeg Jets as well. So anyways, let's just go to you for assessment of Ehlers for the start of the year through 8 games.
As I said a few minutes ago, my level of concern with Nikolai Ehlers is right there with my level of concern with Connor Hellebuck. It is almost insignificant at this time.
Close to zero.
If one or two of those shots went in the first 4 games, I don't think we're even having this conversation. But I will say there's been a few games where he has been outstanding and really jumping off the page, and there's been a few that have been a little more underwhelming. You'd love to get that consistently every single game. But to your point, Ken, I think part of it is who he's been playing with, the different line mates, and the matchups, of course, without Scheifele and Wheeler. And to me, in this next week, with the guys coming back 55 and 26, I'm really interested to see if they can get a consistent line for Nikolai Ehlers, potentially with Mark Scheifele. I mean, that really is intriguing to me if you've got Dubois playing with Connor and they continue to do what they're doing. And try and give him those opportunities to play with top line players and make things happen, because he's certainly earned that opportunity right now. And they haven't had a chance to do that because of the numbers and the injuries on the COVID list. That will be available to Paul Maurice beginning presumably on Tuesday. So how that goes going forward, and I think Nikolai Ehlers will continue to be a huge part of this Winnipeg Jets club and a big asset to a top 6 as they try to really establish 2 lines that can be thrown at any point and be dangerous.
For sure. And C-Mac, yes. I mean, every team in the NHL has a plan to play Nikolai Ehlers hard, but they can't often catch him. And I think actually Ehlers is more engaged when there is that physical component. I mean, I think that's been the biggest development over the last couple of years. Of course, we know that Ehlers he's not a perimeter player, Huss. He goes to the hard areas. So I think that he thrives kind of in that environment that early in his career was maybe not his forte, but he's really worked at becoming a player that kind of goes to the blue paint. And I think that's the part of his game that has really elevated a lot this year. So let's go back to Kyle Connor a little bit here. I mean, you and I have discussed this on different platforms. What's the biggest thing you've seen from Kyle Connor through 8 games of the year here?
Well, he's driving a line himself. I can't say himself because I think Dubois has been brilliant and has really turned into a driver as well. But let's face it. I mean, the guy's scoring 30 every year, but I think a lot of people would have said that, a big part of that is the amount of time he's getting on the top line and playing with the number one center in Mark Scheifele. And I think he's proven to a lot of people that, he wasn't the benefactor of being on the Jets top line. And, it's not happening if he's not playing with Mark Scheifele. And I think that opens, as we mentioned, it opens a whole new group of possibilities for Paul Maurice when he's putting together his top 6 and his top 9. So he's never going to be a defensive stalwart. And I know we talked about the goal earlier tonight, Ken. I don't think that was laziness. I think it was a little lack of awareness for Kyle Connor. And, those are things that I think you improve on as you play more. It's not like he's a new player in the National Hockey League. That will need to get better over the course of the years. But tell you what, the pros and cons for Kyle Connor heavily weighted on the pros right now with the way that he's playing right up near the top of the league scoring leaders.
For sure, and a great assessment from Kevin BX. I think it was one of those players, or maybe it was Gary Galley later on as well. It feels like it looked like that play, if you were shooting for a rebound on the play, that it was probably going to go to Timo Meier. So it's probably one of those where you think he either is going to be covered or the puck isn't going to come to him, and then you look up and you're like, oh, crap. I mean, I probably should have just extended that one extra stride. And that's the other thing. Again, not making excuses, but having been in similar, when you're in similar situations, it's something that maybe end of a shift, the brain's kind of not working at the same level. And before you know it, it hits, the play happens and you're like, man, probably should have had that guy.
Play too. I mean,
totally,
just the way
yes.
they had control. Josh
they did,
Morrissey,
yeah.
I mean, they were thinking offense, and all of a sudden, it's going back the other way. So, those are going to happen every now and then. You would love to have that extra stride and realize the danger and who the man was. It didn't happen. But for every one of those plays, there's certainly at least one, like we saw late in the game with Kyle Connor scoring and earning the Jets at least a point and the opportunity to get two in a game. Frankly, they probably did deserve to be in overtime.
Yeah, right on, Huss. That sounds good. I think we're going to wrap here, unless maybe one quick thing. I know, obviously, the big news of the week was revolving around Kyle Beach and his incredible courage of coming forward. And obviously, as it pertains to the Jets, Kevin Cheveldayoff will not be disciplined by the National Hockey League. What do you expect to hear on Monday when Mark Chipman and Kevin Cheveldayoff address the media for the first time since the ruling came down?
What do I expect to hear? Be honest, I really don't know. I know what I want to hear. I mean, I'd love to hear a very sincere, passionate acknowledgement of what had happened, about the damage that this entire episode caused. I'd love to hear a little bit more detail about why Kevin Cheveldayoff is in a very different situation than everybody else that was in that room. And I'd also love to hear, and I think this is more from Mark Chipman than it will be from Kevin Cheveldayoff, an honest and open dialogue about why they believe in Kevin Cheveldayoff, why they believe this is the right thing to do, to really instill the confidence that the right thing is being done right now. And another part of that, Ken, and I'm not sure whether this happens on Monday or whether it's something that starts, that it's announced later on, but I certainly think that if there's any team outside of the Chicago Blackhawks right now, both the Florida Panthers and the Winnipeg Jets, focusing on Winnipeg, I think have an opportunity to be leaders when it comes to creating significant change, and whether that's programs within hockey, whether that is supporting victim services when it comes to sexual assault. There's a lot of things that I think they need to do to both maintain or regain, in some cases, the confidence of their fan base, and of course the other stakeholders. I mean, there's a lot of sponsors, I think, that have been watching this very closely. Certainly there's a lot of people that have already made up their minds. I'm going to reserve my judgment until we hear everything. But, like I said yesterday on the program, I mean, we talked about the announcement from the National Hockey League. It was so different from what we heard with Joe Quenneville. Yeah. And I don't know about you. When I saw the statement from Gary Bettman on, Thursday night about Quenneville, the fact that, he was resigning and, the fact that he has to meet with the commissioner if he ever wants to work again in the National Hockey League, I kind of thought that was a terrible, terrible news for Kevin Cheveldayoff. But, I mean, to their credit, they said that, we're not painting everyone with the same brush. There's obviously reasons why Cheveldayoff is being handled differently. I think we need to know more about that. And most importantly, find out what the organization is going to do going forward to be part of the change that obviously needs to happen, Ken, in the aftermath of this entire sorrowful saga.
Yeah, awesome. And again, it was great to see Katie Strang from The Athletic and Sheldon Kennedy and Allison Forsyth on the pregame show. Not that we're trying to give plugs here, but Katie Strang is going to join, or the plan is, if she can make it, the plan is to have Katie join Sean and me for their long form Kenny and Renny on Thursday. So we're really looking forward to having her on and really kind of digging into to everything with her.
Let me ask you that though. I mean, what are you expecting to hear tomorrow, Ken?
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to say also, I mean, there's been lots of feedback to my columns, and some people, squarely on side with my suggestion that maybe an apology needs to be given, and I understand a lawyer would never advise that. But I want to just sort of clarify something that some people maybe misunderstood. I'm not saying Kevin Cheveldayoff should apologize to Kyle Beach because he's most at fault. But what I am saying, I think, because Kevin Cheveldayoff is the only one of the 7 people in the room that is still employed by the National Hockey League, back to your comment about leadership, I think an apology is an important first step in terms of A, the healing process for Kyle Beach, and B, making hockey a safer place, which is what the statement spoke to, right? I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff is highly respected in the game. We heard the way that Paul Maurice spoke about him in that very emphatic exchange yesterday, and shout out to Jeff Hamilton for his incredible job this week, especially in that 16 minutes of back and forth.
That
I
was
know
extraordinary.
it was an intense time. I also think that I also want to suggest that Paul Maurice handled himself very well. He provided a lot of insight. He was very patient. Those can be tough exchanges, but he made sure that he wanted to dive right into it and explain himself. He knows Kevin Cheveldayoff very well, and what he said about him is something that was important to the situation. And listening to Brendan Dill,
not too many coaches in the National Hockey League would have been able to handle this situation the way Paul Maurice did. And I'll be the first one to say I think it was a really unfair situation that he's been put in.
For sure.
He wasn't with Chicago. He's got absolutely nothing to do with this, and yet he, maybe more than anyone in hockey, has spoke more about this week, with the availabilities with the Winnipeg Jets on the road. So I do look forward to a time where people can get back to crapping on the coach for who's playing on the third line and the minutes and all that. But I think just about everyone would realize that he rose to the occasion in a very, very difficult situation and handled it about as well as it possibly could be. But again, this isn't about Paul Maurice. This is about what happened with the Blackhawks. Kevin Cheveldayoff's the central figure in this, and moving forward, assuming that he is maintaining his role with the Winnipeg Jets as the general manager, I think that this community, the fan base, the stakeholders of the Winnipeg Jets need to hear open and honest communication about what had happened, why Kevin Cheveldayoff was treated differently, and how they move forward to hopefully create some important change and positives out of such a horrible tragedy.
For sure, Hassan. And the last thing, just to kind of wrap up my point and what I was talking about and why I think the apology was important. And, if Kevin Cheveldayoff wants to apologize privately to Kyle instead of using a public forum, I can totally understand that. These are guys who aren't often comfortable sharing those kind of things in the public, and that's totally fine. But I don't think for a second that Kyle Beach is going, if he hears an apology from Kevin Cheveldayoff, I don't see Kyle Beach suing Kevin Cheveldayoff. I understand everyone's talking about the lawyer element and everything else as an admission of guilt, but Kyle Beach wants the world to be a better place. I don't see him going after Kevin Cheveldayoff. And the other part of that too, Huss, I think that what Kevin Cheveldayoff needs to share is that what he's been doing to create an environment where someone who was in the position that he was back in 2010, we know he was the lowest person on the pecking order. He needs to show why he has created the type of environment that would allow someone in that position feel comfortable coming forward if something happens. And it doesn't have to be a tragic occurrence. These are the kind of things, and when you foster that type of environment, you want people to be comfortable in order to come forward in dealing with some of these things. And that's what I want to hear, and that's what I hope that I hear. And as Comet has said here, I thought that Jennifer Botterill, we're fortunate to know her, Huss, and I'm fortunate to call her a friend. I thought that her take in the first intermission was just absolutely exceptional. It was emotional for her, and I thought that she handled it incredibly well. It's been a tough week for journalists. I mean, this is heavy stuff. No one's trying to say this is tough. I mean, Kyle Beach had the toughest week of anyone, and I think nobody handled the week better than Kyle. I want to also say, I mean, I know he's not watching, but we stand with you, Kyle. We hear you, and there are people that are in your corner and want to support you as you move forward and continue to deal with this. So
his courage that he showed this week is going to make significant change, I think, in hockey. Very necessary change that, frankly, it's ridiculous that it even needs to be happening, but he will do that. And I think even more so, and maybe as importantly, the courage that he showed, I think, is going to help so many victims that have been through some horrible incidents like Kyle was, as well as, I think, legitimately prevent some future incidents from happening again. I'm not saying this is all going to be ruled out. I mean, that would be fantastic, but I think we're not naive enough to think that this is not an issue far beyond hockey and just in society right now. But there will be a lot of coming out of this for the good, but it's all because of the courage of Kyle Beach and the way he handled it, being so open, telling his story the way it is. And I mean, as I said, I heard Elliot Friedman say this. I mean, the NHL rights package is a 12-year deal. I think this will be the biggest story probably over the course of these 12 years in hockey right now. And it can also be not only the most important one, but the most impactful if the changes that need to come out of this happen. And I think that's what everyone is expecting. And certainly we hope to hear some of that on Monday when we hear from Cheveldayoff and Chipman.
Yeah, right on, Huss. And thank you very much for being with us here today. Thank you again to Kyle Beach for being such a courageous individual. And thanks to everyone for checking this out and being with us all week. We know that we don't always agree with things, but it's a great forum to kind of air some things out. And we appreciate your passion, as I always mention, Huss. Hope it's a great rest of the weekend for you. Folks, we'll be back Tuesday. And happy 40th birthday to Laura Reynolds. That is the reason that Huss was pinch hitting tonight. Big night for Laura. So Sean sends his love, and happy 40th. And thanks again to everybody for joining us. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again on Tuesday.